every Sunday that I appreciate y'all coming to Sunday school, but that is the truth. I appreciate y'all coming to Sunday school. So it's always nice to have people to I don't want to say teach to, but maybe just to be sitting in here listening to me while I'm teaching. So if you have your Bible, turn to the book of 1 Kings, chapter number 12. We will return to the book of 1 Kings right here. And for those of you who haven't been in here, we've been looking at the city of Bethel. And we went through several different people, but now we're in the reign of Jeroboam, and Jeroboam has God has split the kingdom. He told Solomon he was going to, but he was not going to do it in his day. He was going to do it in his son's day. And so as soon as Rehoboam takes over, Jeroboam comes back from Egypt, and when he comes back from Egypt, him and the people from Israel, from the other tribes, they come up and they put in a request that Rehoboam would treat them better than what Solomon had treated them. And so Rehoboam takes counsel, and when he takes counsel with the old men first, and the old men give him some good counsel, but he ignores that counsel and he goes to the young men that he grew up with, and those young men give poor counsel. And we talked about that last week, how that he said that he was going to, his father, chastise them with whips. He was going to use scorpions and the other things that he said. And so the people revolted and they left, which, that was told by the prophet Ahijah that was going to happen. So Jeroboam becomes king of 10 tribes of Israel. He becomes king, and in verse number, we'll start in verse number 25, and we'll just read through the end of the chapter just to refresh our memory here. But then Jeroboam built Shechem and Mount Ephraim and dwelt therein, and went out from thence and built Penuel. And Jeroboam said in his heart, now shall the kingdom return to the house of David. If this people go up to do sacrifice in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, then shall the heart of this people turn again unto their Lord, even unto Rehoboam king of Judah, and they shall kill me, and go again into Rehoboam king of Judah. Whereupon the king took counsel, and made 2 calves of gold, and said, It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And he set the one in Bethel, and the other put he in Dan. And this thing became a sin, for the people went to worship before the one, even unto Dan. And he made an house of high places, and made priests of the lowest of the people, which were not of the sons of Levi. And Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month, and the 15th day of the month, like unto the feast that is in Judah, and he offered upon the altar. So did he in Bethel, sacrificing unto the calves that he had made. And he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places which he had made. So he offered upon the altar, which he had made in Bethel, the 15th day of the 8th month, even in the month which he had devised of his own heart, and ordained a feast unto the children of Israel, and offered upon the altar, and burnt incense. And so I actually probably should read a little bit in chapter 13, but we should get to that, and so we'll just pick up there. So again, here's Jeroboam, and God has allowed him to become king over Israel. And at the very beginning, he does some things that's intelligent. He builds up Shechem and Mount Ephraim, and he builds those places up, and it's for defense, but it's also for a place for him to reign from. And he builds those places up, and he builds those places up, and he's got those places, and now he says in his heart. The Bible says he says in his heart. And I thought about this. I thought about how easy it is for us to go astray because what we say in our heart. And I talked about it last week, and I mentioned last week how many people have left the church because of something they said in their heart. Like that person's mad at me. And by the way, everyone, all y'all pranksters and jokesters, last week I brought up about the fact that no one comes upstairs and shakes my hand. I had about 15 people come up and shake my hand during handshake last week whenever Brother Randy announced handshaking time. I had about 15 people come up there and shook my hand. And so I was like, y'all think you're funny. Next week I'm going to talk about how y'all don't pay the Sunday school teacher. And we'll see what happens next week, whether y'all bring an offering up there to the Sunday school teacher. But anyway, like I said, I appreciate the good humor. I enjoy a good joke, and I got a good chuckle out of it. Actually, Paul was up there with me. He got a chuckle out of them, all coming up there and shaking my hand, and they just kept coming. Like one wave would come through, and next thing you know, they recruited some more people to come up there. But anyway, I thought about how in the early stages of Jeroboam's reign, two mistakes that he made, two major mistakes that he made. Number one, he's going to make some priests, but the man that he talked to, the man the man that told him he was going to be the king in Israel, the man who told him that, you don't hear anything about him. You don't hear anywhere where he goes to him. Now, again, we're going to see in chapter number 14 where he sends his wife to go to them. But in chapter 12 and chapter 13, Ahijah, his prophet, is completely ignored. And I've thought about how sometimes you see people and they're raised up in church and they've been in church their whole life. And Brother Dakota, they get married, and the first thing they do is like, you know what? Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, that's a little bit too much. That's a little bit too much. And if we do everything that the church, that we're kind of expected to do with the church, we're not going to be able to do some things that we'd really like to do, and we just like to go have some fun. So the first thing they do is they kind of push their religion away for a little while and say, well, let's just go sow some oats. Let's just go sow some oats for a little while. Let's go sow some oats, and then we'll come back eventually. We'll come back around eventually. Maybe we'll come back around eventually. And so Jeroboam starts his kingdom off, and I don't see anywhere where number one, I don't see where he thanks God. I don't see where he thanks God for allowing him to become king. I don't see where he gets any spiritual advisors. It looks again like he pushes those away, and so because he doesn't have that, it says he took counsel. And we talked about that last week, how Rehoboam took counsel, and he took counsel of the old men and ignored it, took counsel of the young men and said, okay, that sounds good to us, sounds good to me, even though it was terrible counsel. But here's Jeroboam, and he takes counsel also, but the Bible doesn't tell us who he took counsel with, but whoever he took counsel with wasn't a good counselor. And I found that to be true a lot of times as well. Sometimes you'll take counsel, but you'll only take counsel from those that you know are going to agree with you. You'll take counsel, you kind of feel them out a little bit. You'll feel them out a little bit and realize, oh, this guy thinks like me, so let me ask him, hey, how do you feel about this situation? And then he's like, well, me and so-and-so, we agree. Well, oh, that's okay, you're both wrong. You both can be wrong. And so he takes counsel, and he says, well, what should we do here? What should we do? But he built those cities, and then he says in his heart, he said, God gave me this kingdom, but if I don't do something, I'm going to lose this kingdom. And honestly, that's true. But the counsel he took was wrong counsel. He should have went to Ahijah and said, hey, tell me what I need to do. What do I need to do so that I can establish my family? I can establish my family and build my family, and establish my family just like God established David in Judah. How can Jeroboam's name be established in Israel? But he never did that. He never went to a man of God. He never went to his man of God. He never went and said, hey, help me understand, what will it take for me to become the greatest king that Israel has ever known? What will it take for me so that when it's my time to go off the scene, my son can step in and follow in my footsteps? They followed in his footsteps all right, but it wasn't a good thing. And so he just says, let me see what could I do? He said, you know what? If I don't do something, I'm going to lose this kingdom. Well, God gave him the kingdom. To me, it's ridiculous. The answer's so simple. But honestly, I was talking to someone the other day. Oh, I know, it's Brother Townsend at the camp, and I was talking to Brother Townsend. And I was talking about a situation. I said, Brother Townsend, I don't understand it. And then I said, you know what, Brother Townsend, let me rephrase that. The problem is, it's been so long since I was in that situation, I don't understand it now. But if I go back to when I was in that situation, I did the same thing that person did or was doing. And so sometimes for me, I just turned 50 this year, and so sometimes for me, again, it's hard for me to put myself in Grady's shoes. Sometimes it's hard for me to put myself in Bub's shoes. Sometimes, and so sometimes I have to fight against myself to give them some grace, because if I acknowledge the fact, I'm like, hey, I did the same thing you did. I've made the same mistakes you did. And sometimes it frustrates me, because I'm like, well, hey, I made these mistakes, but I didn't have any guidance, so I'm trying to give you guidance, so don't make these mistakes. And so, but anyway, you understand, sometimes it's very frustrating, but then I put myself in their situation. I'm like, you know what, I did the same thing. And so here is Jeroboam. He said, I'm gonna lose the kingdom. If I let them go back up to Jerusalem, they're gonna go back to Rehoboam. Well, there's nowhere that says Rehoboam ever changed. There's nothing that said where Rehoboam sent a message to all of Israel and said, hey guys, remember what I said about them scorpions? Yeah, that was a big joke. I was just being silly that day. There's nowhere where any of that was said. And so he just said it in his heart. And so his heart deceived him. His heart deceived him. Sometimes your heart will deceive you and be like, hey, these people at Concord don't love me, so I need to go somewhere else. And you go somewhere else, and you're like, well, these people down here don't love me. And you go somewhere else, and these people down here don't love me. And I think it's Brother Jones told someone one time, he said, hey, if everywhere you go, the people smell bad, it might not be the people that you're talking to, it might be you is the person that smells bad. And sometimes you have to, instead of looking at everyone else and be like, hey, must be this person, they don't, maybe it's just you. Maybe you need to deal with you. And so here's Jeroboam, and instead of dealing with Jeroboam and saying, hey, Jeroboam needs some help here, he said, I'm going to do this on my own. I don't need you, man of God. I don't need you. I don't need you. I'll do this on my own. And so it says he took counsel and he made 2 calves of gold and said unto them, it is too much for you. Now, again, like I said this last week, he said, it's too much for you. I start worrying when people start thinking, hey, I really want to help you out. If you're in the sales side of things, sometimes I start questioning when people they really are eager to help me. They're not really that eager to help me. They're really eager to make a sale. Is what they're really eager to do. And so, but they have to make it sound like, hey, I'm on your team, and they are, all the way up to the point where you sign the dotted line. Now, sometimes you want repeat business, so you got to kind of stay on the team. But ultimately, you know what? They're really just trying to sell you a product. And for us, for my company, if you're selling for my company and you lose your job, you may go down to the competitor and start selling for the competitor. And sometimes that happens, and the guy's like, hey, like for the last 10 years, you've been telling me this company's the best company and got the best air compressor. Now you work for the other company. Now this is the best one. Like, you're just a salesman. But anyway. So he tells him, he said, we're gonna make these gods, and it's not for me. It's not for me. It's not for me. It's for you. I'm doing it for you. I'm doing it for you because it's just so much trouble. It's just so much trouble for y'all to have to go to Jerusalem 3 times a year. You're required to go down there to Jerusalem and present yourselves, and it's just way too much trouble. So I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to make it look like church. We're going to make it look like church, and we're going to make it sound like church. But you know what? We're going to do things just a little bit different. There's not supposed to be any graven images, and there's not any graven images down in the temple and all that stuff there in Jerusalem. But it's okay. We're gonna make some, and because we know at the heart, y'all are really just a bunch of idolaters. Y'all really just a bunch of idolaters. It's really what is what he said. And honestly, sometimes when I think about this, because if you remember, whenever Rehoboam went to get up an army to go against Jeroboam, the prophet came and said, hey, you're not going to do that. You're not going to do that. Now he lets Rehoboam's son do it, but he doesn't let Rehoboam do it. But anyway, he doesn't let him do it, and in my heart, and it took a long time. But again, if you remember, every time in the book of Judges, whenever they got out of hand, what did God do? God had to send people in there. He had to send people in there to put them in distress and put them and sometimes take them into some sort of captivity or just defeat them militarily or do something to them to get them to go back to call them back on God so that they would come back to God, and they'd come back to God for a little while, and then they would go back again, and then God would have to send someone else in, and then he'd raise up a judge to defend them, and it just went back and forth, this same process. And I think if I were honest, sometimes in my own heart, Brother Dakota, I find that in my own life where I get a little bit of revival, I get a little bit stirred up, I get a little bit stirred up, and I do some things that I hadn't been doing, and I stop doing some things that I have been doing, and I do pretty good for a little while, and then I start feeling myself get a little cold, and then I stop doing the things that I should be doing, and start doing the things that I shouldn't be doing, and then it's just this big cycle. And God, and in my mind, God may have got tired of these 10 tribes being idolaters in heart, and some, the people of Dan, just being true idolaters. And God said, fine, I'm going to let you have what you want. And sometimes that's the worst thing. Sometimes when you're dealing, like when I dealt with my kids, I'd be like, hey, don't do that. Hey, don't do that. Hey, don't do that. And sometimes they get spanking and be like, trying to tell you, hey, don't do it. And then sometimes you're like, fine, I'm just going to let you do it. I'm going to let you do it because I told you not to, and then you're going to suffer the consequences. These are the consequences I tried to keep you from, but because you refuse to listen, now you're going to have to suffer the consequences so that you learn the hard way. I'd rather you just learn by listening, but if you don't want to learn by listening, I'm going to let you learn the hard way. And God seems to... Can I say parent the children of Israel that way sometimes? God said, fine, if that's what you want, that's what I'm going to give you. And to me, it looks like these 10 tribes basically said, hey, that's what we want. And God said, fine, if that's what you want, that's what I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you a king. I'm going to give you a king that you desire. I'm going to give you a king that will allow you to worship these golden calves. That'll build these high places. That'll build these places up. And I'll give you a king that you can follow after, and you can follow after. I'll give you that. And so he says right here in verse number 29, he says, and he set the one in Bethel. Now again, like I said, here's Bethel, and we understand, again, if you understand your history, you understand that Bethel had significance. But it had significance in 2 ways. It had significance because of the significance it had in Jacob's life. But it also had significance because of its relation to Jerusalem. It's basically directly north of Jerusalem, and should have been on the path from those tribes coming down. They probably would have funneled down through Bethel before they went to Jerusalem. And so he set a place up there and said, hey, I got a place. You don't need to keep going. Don't go any further. Like you can just stop right here. And it's a convenient place. Dan is all the way on the other end. He's like, hey, you people that live up in the northern end, just go to Dan. Don't make the trip south. Don't come south. Just go on up to Dan. And so he set those two places. In verse number 30, it says, and this thing became a sin for the people. And again, I think it was 14 times. I don't have it written down right here, but I think it was 14 times that it's mentioned. But 14 times after Jeroboam, it talks about a king or following in the sins of Jeroboam. Following after the sins of Jeroboam, repeating the same mistake that Jeroboam made. And I keep saying 250 years. We did a study probably when I first started teaching. Brother Tyrone, he's probably forgot it because it's been so long ago. But we're talking 6 years ago when I first started teaching. We did a study on the kings of Judah and the kings of Israel. And if you remember, Israel goes to captivity first. Part of them go, then the rest of them go, and Judah is still there, and then eventually Judah goes. And so I keep saying 250. I think the year is 253 years, and I thought about this. If you think about that, it's actually pretty convenient because America just celebrated 250. The Declaration of Independence right there on July 4th, 250 years. And so you think about if George Washington or Thomas Jefferson started a sin, and then every president after that, it followed, all the way up till Donald Trump today. That would be the same thing that happens here with Jeroboam. He starts a sin, and it follows, and it follows, and it follows, and it follows, and it follows in Israel. Now, some of the kings of Judah follow after him. Some of the kings of Judah repeat the problem. But in Israel, they never had a good king. They never had a good king. They never had a king. And even though it changed from Jeroboam's family to Baasha's family to another family, 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 Chris, he started something, but he didn't start a good thing. He started something, but it wasn't a good thing. Let me look back in Chronicles right here. Let me see if I can find it real quick. In verse number in 2 Chronicles chapter number 11. 2 Chronicles chapter number 11. In verse number 13, it says, and the priests and the Levites that were in all Israel resorted to him out of all their coasts. For the Levites left their suburbs and their possessions and came to Judah and Jerusalem, for Jeroboam and his sons had cast them off from executing the priest office unto the Lord. And he ordained him priest for the high places and for the devils and for the calves which he made. So again, here in Kings, it's basically just talking about the two golden calves that he made. But in Chronicles, it expands on that and said he made devils. And when I looked that up, it talks about he-goats, and it's just, again, another image. It's just another image for the children of Israel to bow down to and worship. But here in Kings, he tells them that these are thy gods. Two gods in verse number 28. He said, behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And I said it last week, and I want to repeat it again this week. Very few times did anyone go to Egypt. Very few times did anyone go to Egypt and come back from Egypt without bringing Egypt with them. And we understand that we reference Egypt as a type of the world. And I will say, again, watch someone that goes out to the world and then tries to come back. Again, like I said, it's funny how it's different, and very rarely does it happen. But if you get someone that grew up in the world and they get saved, a lot of times they don't want anything. They don't want to go back. But you get someone that grew up in church and then they go out to the world, it's hard to win them back. And then if you do win them back, they've got so much Egypt that's stuck on them that it's very difficult. I mean, it's very difficult. Now, it's not always the case. It's not always the case. But once they go away, when they come back, they feel like they never can just fit in again. They feel like they just don't fit in. They just feel like they're just not, they just don't fit in anymore. And I think a lot of it, back to what Jeroboam did, back to what he did, is what did he do? He set it in his heart. He's convinced himself in his heart, oh, I don't fit in with these people anymore. Oh, these people, they're judging me. They're judging me. They're looking at me and they're judging me. And the problem is the devil is telling them that because we want them to come back. We want them to come back. We want them to get right with God. Anyone who has a prodigal, if you have a prodigal, if you are a prodigal, we want your prodigal to come home. But the devil will tell you, hey, if you come back, they're going to treat you different. Hey, they can't love you like they did before because you're dirty and you're filthy and you're vile. And that's the devil telling them that. But it's so hard for them to come back and so hard for them to get in and stick. They might come in for a little while and then they're just like, I just don't feel right. And so here is Jeroboam, and he's like, hey, here are your gods, O Israel. Here are your gods. Here, serve these gods. And he didn't just build those calves. He made those devils, and he makes those high places, and he sets those places up, and it becomes a sin. It becomes a sin because the people went to worship. And they went to worship at those idols. When I read Matthew Henry makes it out like they were not violating, serving another god, and they were just falling down to an image. I just don't know that I can run with him right there, because I feel like they were bowing down, and he said gods, plural. These be like gods, O Israel. I don't know that I can run with him. I think he set them up and said, hey, here's what you should bow down to. And it says, and he made an house of high places, and made priests of the lowest of the people, which were not of the sons of Levi. So again, why did he have to do this? Why did he have to do this? I read it to you. He said, for the Levites left their suburbs and their possessions and came to Judah and Jerusalem, for Jeroboam and his sons had cast them off from executing the priest office unto the Lord. Now, again, we understand there's a difference between the priests and the prophets. We understand that. But God had ordained these priests and set them up in cities throughout Israel, throughout the whole land of Israel. He'd set them up and had them, and they were executing their office. We understand that. And so Jeroboam goes in, and he doesn't just make these calves. Because these priests were not just executing the office, but they were also the teachers of the day. And so these priests, someone probably said, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? You can't do that. We can't worship calves. Don't you remember what happened whenever Aaron made those calves? Don't you remember that God slew 3,000 people and how Moses had to come down off the mountain? Don't you remember any of that? Why, how dare you? How dare you set those calves up? And Jeroboam's son said, who do you think you are? We're the Levites. We're the priests. That's who we're supposed to be. He said, I don't need you. I don't need you. I don't need you. Every one of us should be careful in our heart whenever we start feeling like we don't need a man of God. When we don't need a man of God. I don't need you. I don't need you. I'm doing fine on my own. I can handle this on my own. I can do this. I don't need the church. I don't need a man of God. I don't need the place where God ordained for me to worship. I'll create my own place. Go on visitation. Knock, knock, knock. Hey, how you doing? Concord Baptist Church, out here telling people about Jesus, how Jesus died for them, died for their sins. You go to church anywhere? Yes. Oh, where do you go? I go to the lake. What? Just me and the Lord out there on the water. Just me and the Lord, we're out there on the water, and we just have ourselves a time. Where do you go? I go to the deer stand. Yeah. Deer Stand Baptist Church? Yes, sir. I go out there and I sit in that tree, and it's just so wonderful out there. I just sit out there, me and the Lord, we just fellowship, and they don't go to church, but they've justified in their mind. I remember we were working on Hagen's rental property. Let me phrase it that way. We were working on Hagen's rental property, and the neighbors from Hagen's rental property, they walked across the street, and they were introducing themselves to us and everything. And we started talking about church, and the guy informed me very quickly that his church was right over there. The little yellow house was his church. And I don't know whether it's a nonprofit organization or whatever, but he was a house church guy, and he was the prophet, priest, and king of his house church was what he was. And he wasn't interested in going to church. He wasn't interested in talking anything about church, because we worship over there. And so Jeroboam said, hey, I don't need you guys. I don't need you. But look what happens here. It says, and he ordained him priests for the high places and for the devils and for the calves which he had made. And after them out of all the tribes of Israel, such as set their hearts to seek the Lord God of Israel, came to Jerusalem to sacrifice unto the Lord God of their fathers. So they strengthened the kingdom of Judah and made Rehoboam the son of Solomon strong 3 years. For 3 years they walked in the way of David and Solomon. And so here, Jeroboam says, hey, I don't need you. And good people looked and said, well, if you don't need them, you don't need us. And we're just going to leave. We're just going to leave. If you don't need God's ordained priest, and if you don't want them to do the service because they're going to try and do the service the way God said it was supposed to be done, and they're going to refuse to do the service to your calves and your devils that you've created, if you're going to do that, then we're leaving. And they left. Those Levites got up and left. And good people said, from these other tribes, not of Judah, not of Benjamin, some of these other tribes said, hey, we're just going to go down there to Jerusalem because they're still worshiping God. They're still worshiping Jehovah in Jerusalem. They're still worshiping. And again, like I said, I understand what Solomon did. I understand how he did. And I understand that God took, split the kingdom. I understand every bit of that. But it says right there that for 3 years under Rehoboam's reign, they were following after God. And these people had an opportunity, and you think about that. These people looked and said, I've lived here my whole life, Matthew. I've lived here my whole life. I got my farm here, I got my sheep here, got my cattle here, got all my stuff here. I got my in-laws here, which is not a bad thing to live a little bit away from your in-laws. You got to live at least 500 feet away from your in-laws to be able to get along. But anyway, I got my in-laws here, got my kids here, my grandkids are going to be here. All these kids are here, and Jeroboam takes over, and they were probably kind of excited. They were probably kind of with him when Rehoboam said, "Hey, I'm going to chastise you with scorpions." They're like, "Hey, we're with you. We're with you." We wanted Rehoboam to lighten our load. We wanted him to treat us a little bit better than Solomon, and we're with you. And sometimes you're like, "Hey, that's a great idea," and then you find out, "Oh, wait a second, maybe that wasn't such a great idea after all." Because Jeroboam's like, "Hey, we're not even following Jehovah anymore. We're gonna worship these gods, and these are gonna be our gods." And so he kicks out the Levites. He kicks out those priests, and then he just takes whoever. He just goes down the street corner. The guy sitting down there on the side of the interstate with his "won't work for food" sign, sitting out there. He's like, "Hey, come here. Would you like to be a priest?" "Absolutely, I'd love to." "Well, what does that entail?" You just gotta kind of lead the service and just do little things and get people to come down and be entertained and willing to worship these calves that I've built, willing to bow down to these devils that I've built, willing to do that, and we got to keep them away from Jerusalem, because if they go down to Jerusalem, I'm going to lose my kingdom, because then they're going to follow them. And so the priests of the lowest places, the lowest order, the lowest of the low, He pulled them up and said, you're now a priest, and decimated and desecrated that office. Then he says in verse 32, it says, and Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month on the 15th day. If you look at Leviticus chapter number 23, Leviticus chapter number 23, let me get here right quick, verse number 33. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, the 15th day of this 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days unto the Lord. On the first day shall be an holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein. 7 days ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. On the 8th day shall be an holy convocation unto you, and ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. It is a solemn assembly, and ye shall do no servile work therein. And so God instituted that in Leviticus, and Jeroboam, again, like I said, Jeroboam had enough religion. He knew enough about religion that he said, hey, they're going to want to go down there for that because it's a big time. It's a time where everyone gets together and a time where everyone is very serious about following Jehovah, and I can't let that happen. I can't let that happen. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my own out of my own heart. But I'm going to make it so much like what they already experienced that they're going to be like, it's not that much. It's not that much different. And you got to remember, the good people have left. The priests have left. The people that wanted to follow God have left. And now it's just the people that were perfectly happy to worship idols. The people that are perfectly willing to worship idols. And they said, hey, we're going to have our rock and roll band in church. We're going to have our rock and roll band in church. We're going to have long-haired hippies up here on the platform. And we can do all those things. And we can worship God just like they have been worshiping. And God does it. God didn't want it that way. He wanted them to go to Jerusalem. He wanted them to go back on the 7th month. But Jeroboam said, "No, we're going to go on the 8th month. Don't waste your time going down there. Don't waste your time right after you've had your harvest. Don't waste your time. Stay here and come up here." And he just twisted a little bit. And y'all understand, if you're driving a car and you just turn your wheel just a little bit, if you go very long, you'll make a full circle. Just turn it just a little bit, and it don't take you very long till you're in a ditch, till you're off in a ditch, till you're off on the other side of the road. The other day I was coming through Resaca. I was headed to work, coming through Resaca, and right there at the bridge, right there where the guy was coming down, I don't know what he was doing, playing on his phone, changing his radio, eating a Big Mac. I don't know what he was doing. Well, I'll tell you what he wasn't doing, Justin. He wasn't watching the road because he was all the way over on my side of the road. And I'm like, well, I ain't nowhere to go. You know how it is right there. It's right there. It's right there. It's right there at Moore's Field. It's like, well, I can either hit the guardrail, but it's not going to let me go anywhere because I'm in that little bitty van. I can hit the guardrail, or I'm about to get hit head on. And I'm just like, Lord, please let this guy figure out what he's doing pretty quick. And so he looked up and moved back over. But it don't take much, just 1 or 2 degrees. If you're just 1 or 2 degrees off, I mean, again, we got construction guys here. If you're only 1 or 2 degrees off and you're only going 5 foot, that's not too bad. But if you're going 500 foot, by the time you get down to the other end, it's pretty far off. It's pretty far off. You look at my house. I think every person that worked on my house was drunk or high while he was working on my house. Because I don't think they knew how to read a tape measure. One of the three. Drunk, high, or they don't know how to use a tape measure. Because my house is crooked. And so we got it all the way up to the top. And we're like, what are we going to do about that? And I'm like, well, there ain't nothing we can do about it now because, we've got all of the concrete that's already poured. We got all these other walls. And so what are we going to do? Well, we're just going to... And we're going to try to make it look like it's not crooked. But it's crooked. I know it's crooked. 23 years later, I know it's crooked. And if you look close enough, you'll be like, what in the world? And I guess they were drunk, high, or they couldn't read a tape measure. Or maybe all three at once. And so anyway, so you understand, but it just takes going off just a little bit, Jake, just a little bit, just a little bit. We're just gonna change things just a little bit. We're just gonna move the line just a little bit. We're just gonna move the mark just a little bit. We're just not gonna follow God in this one little area. We're not going to go on the 7th month, which is what God said. We're going to do it the way we want to do it, and we're going to do it on the 8th month. But I'll tell you what it was going to be. I'll guarantee you on that 8th month, I'll guarantee you what it was. I'll bet it was a party. I'll bet it was a party. You remember whenever Aaron made those golden calves, I mean, what did they do? They rose up to play. They rose up to play. They jumped up, and Aaron made them take their clothes off, and they were running around naked, and they were not ashamed, and they were just having a party. I'm gonna say this. You can agree with me. You don't have to, but you can agree with me if you want to, or you can disagree with me if you want to. Church is not a place to be a party. It's a place. I have a good time at church. Brother Randy does a great job. You know, I mean, he tells some really corny jokes sometimes. Sometimes you laugh, not because the joke's funny, but because, you know, it's so corny it's funny. And so, but, you know, I mean, I never mind Brother Green. Like, I enjoyed Brother Green. You know, Brother Green, he'd get up and he'd tell a joke or two. That's never bothered me. You know, some people get very offended at a joke, at a preacher tells a joke in the pulpit. I always enjoyed Brother Green would skin your hide 32 seconds after he told you one of the funniest jokes you ever heard in all your life. I understand that. Church is not a party. It's not supposed to be a party. It's not supposed to be a party. It's supposed to be a place that you come in and you worship God. It's a place that you come in and you hear from God and you hear from God's man, and he gives a message to the people of God. And it's where like-minded people fellowship. It's not a party. But I'll guarantee that 8th month was supposed to be a party. It was supposed to be a party. It says in verse number 33, it says, so he offered upon the altar, he made himself a priest. He offered. Again, he's already kicked out all the others, and he's kicked the good ones out, and he's brought these of the lowest degree. And so guess who's chief priest in Jeroboam's kingdom? Jeroboam is chief priest in Jeroboam's kingdom. He's chief priest. And he says he offered upon the altar which he had made in Bethel the 15th day of the 8th month, even in the month which he had devised of his own heart, and ordained a feast unto the Lord. No, that's not what it says. He made a feast, but he made it unto the children of Israel. He said, come on, boys. Come on down here, and what you had when you were down there, it was so serious and so solemn, and that's not what's going to be here. It's going to be a church for people that don't do church. That's what this is going to be. It's going to be a church. It's going to be a place for people that don't do church. That's the kind of church that Jeroboam said that's what we're going to have. That's the kind of worship Jeroboam said we're going to have. We're going to worship not like they do down there. They're so solemn and so serious. No, we're gonna worship our gods that we created, that I created out of my own heart, and we're gonna do it, but we're gonna do it the way I want to do it, and it's gonna be a party. And it's not gonna be to God, it's gonna be for you. It's gonna be for you. Again, 2 different times he said, hey, you don't need to go down to Jerusalem. I put these calves up, so it's so much easier on you. And the ulterior motive that he never tells them, but God tells us, is the whole time the ulterior motive was not for them to actually truly worship God. It was not for them to do anything except for him to stay with him. And Jeroboam was willing to do anything as long as they would follow under him. devised of his own heart an ordained feast unto the children of Israel, and he offered upon the altar and burnt incense. Lord willing, we get in next week. God sent a man of God down there to him and said, hey, it's not how this is supposed to be. And I'll just say it. I'll just say it. The shame of it is when he sends that man of God, he doesn't cry against Jeroboam. He doesn't cry against the people. He just talks to the altar. He cries against the altar. And in my mind, the good people have left. They've kicked the priest out. And God said, I'm already done with these people. They're not going to repent. They're not going to change. They're not going to listen. And so he cries against the altar. Thank you.